virtual door into the main arena. So I kind of extemporize for a few seconds as people are coming in. I'm watching the counter go up as people are arriving into the main room. You're all very welcome. My name is Anthony Suarez. For those of you who don't know me, I am the director of the Center for Cross-Border Studies, and I'm joined here today by Ben Rocha, who has volunteered with us for a while now and has really supported the work of the Centre, and particularly in terms of this quarterly survey on North, South and East, West cooperation. Ben is a research associate with the Centre for Cross-Border Studies, but he is a PhD candidate at Queen's University Belfast, and he will be presenting the results very, very shortly. Forgive me just for a moment as I share my screen with you. And here we go. Yes, so welcome everyone. I think we have, most people now have come into the main arena and we can get started properly. So just to, many of you were present, attended the presentation of the results for the first quarter survey. This is the second quarter survey. So some of what I'm about to say, those of you who attended the presentation of the results from the first quarterly survey will be familiar with some of this. But I just thought it would be important to remind people why we are doing this. This survey really is an absolutely vital means to give us, and when I say us, I'm not talking necessarily just about the Centre for Cross-Border Studies or for our immediate partners. It's for us as communities, as people who live on this island or on these islands and further afield, to give us all an understanding of the extent to which the conditions that we really need, that people need to undertake North-South cooperation, are actually being maintained, and how relations between civic society organisations and local authorities on the island of Ireland and Great Britain are being safeguarded following the end of the Brexit transition period. We're now into the 7th month following the end of that period, and the implementation of the protocol on Ireland, Northern Ireland, which is obviously continued to be a major topic of conversation, not least because of what occurred yesterday in terms of the UK government's proposals that it presented yesterday, announced yesterday. So the information that this survey provides us is used by the Centre as we work with other organisations on the island of Ireland and further afield, and indeed with other agencies and with government departments, North, South, and also with the Commission, to protect North, South and East, West relations and cooperation. And just again to remind you, one of the other reasons or the kind of factors that inform the undertaking of this quarterly survey, now into its second edition, it's really aimed specifically at civic society organisations and local authorities on the island of Ireland, because of the fact that when the mapping exercise of North-South cooperation was undertaken in 2017 by the UK government and the Commission, along with the assistance of the Irish government and Northern Ireland Civil Service, this level of cooperation undertaken by the local authorities and civic society organisations may have been overlooked, and that was indeed acknowledged in the technical notes that were published subsequently by both the UK government and the European Commission, where they did note that some informal local community level cooperation may not have been captured by that exercise. So it's really important that this survey is a means of perhaps capturing the levels of cooperation that are undertaken by civic society organisations and local authorities. So before I go introduce Ben or allow Ben to go on to present the results, I just want to remind people of a couple of other things really important. Is I would really ask people, encourage people to use the chat function to share comments, to share ideas, to put their European, to chat literally between ourselves, so that's between participants as well, but also to raise any questions that you might have, any comments you might have in terms of the results themselves that Ben is about to present. And hopefully at the end, when Ben has finished his presentation, we can then dedicate a few minutes then to perhaps answering some of those questions. The other thing that I wanted to note is that we would completely understand that there might be an element of fatigue in public in general, and those and official level and even governmental level, a level of fatigue around the issue of the protocol, implementation of the protocol. But one of the things we have to remind ourselves of is we have to be looking at this as a long-term process. It's not something that can be immediately fixed, immediately resolved, immediately finalized. And indeed, leaving aside the protocol for the moment, the UK's departure from the EU we're now into a new context that is the context for the foreseeable future. And we have to understand what that context means for cooperation in terms of North-South and East-West cooperation and relations going forward. So it's long-term, and we have to understand that. I also want to mention that Ben, with some input from myself, have also, alongside this presentation, there's a research briefing that accompanies these results, this second quarterly survey, which gives a lot more detail than what will be presented here today, obviously. That research briefing will be published, will be online at 12 p.m. today, but you will all be emailed with a link to it anyway, but I just wanted to alert you all to that. So without further ado, I am now going to hand over to Ben. Over to you, Ben, and I'm going to let you come in with a presentation of the results. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here with us this morning, and I hope the weather is equally as good wherever you all are. I'm going to walk through the presentation of the results in a few steps today. I'm going to begin with an overview of the data and how we can best understand the data and how it can be used most productively. I'll then give some brief analysis of the respondents, where they're from, who the respondents are, broadly defined, and then move into the core of the analysis, which will focus on the North-South and East-West dimensions for cooperation and collaboration. Now, just in terms of understanding the data in the context for this survey, there were 72 respondents to this round of the survey, and 36 of those we have been able to verify as being responses from the previous survey. This has implications for how we are able to understand one survey in light of the other. And essentially, given the proportion of new respondents, we're not able to say that differences in results from the last quarter survey compared to this quarter are not a function of the different cohort of respondents, rather than a clear and robust indication of a change in perceptions of conditions from one quarter to the other. So essentially, because we are working with two panels, we're unable to draw robust inferences between one or the other. And we are working, sort of recognizing this as a potential issue. We are working on developing our research methodology and our sampling to ensure that we are able to draw inferences more robustly in future surveys. That said, in terms of feedback from the last survey, we've added questions to gauge perceptions and understandings of the protocol, and we've included open text questions alongside the contextual questions to understand more precisely, with more nuanced detail, how respondents are experiencing and perceiving changing conditions for North-South and East-West cooperation and collaboration. And the results from this survey need to be approached with that spirit in mind. While it may be difficult to draw inferences across surveys, this survey is very detailed and very nuanced in providing a snapshot of conditions as they stand now. And this does give us some very important information, particularly given that the respondents we have to this survey all have a wealth of insight and experience and expertise of cross-border collaboration and cooperation. And so the results here need to be borne in mind that we are working with a very, very well-informed panel here who can give us a lot of very valuable insights. So just giving brief consideration to the response, as I say, there are 72 respondents to this survey. I know that says 71 there, that is my bad, I'm sorry, that should be 72. And 36 of those are repeat respondents. Now, 38% of respondents are based in the Republic of Ireland and 49% based in Northern Ireland. 11% of respondents report that they have a presence in both jurisdictions, and 3% have said that they are not based on the island of Ireland, but have a stake in cross-border cooperation, either north-south or east-west. And I believe that one was based in London and the other in the United States. Looking towards the contact and collaboration in the north-south dimension, this quarter, 72% of response reported that they had meetings with partners in the other jurisdiction on the island of Ireland. And for 56% of respondents who have had meetings, this has been at the same level as the previous quarter and has been an increase for a third of respondents. In terms of challenges that were discussed, 89% of respondents reported that their meetings with partner organisations discussed challenges and obstacles to cross-border cooperation and collaboration. And these were quite varied and manifold. They included issues around the Northwest Development Fund, issues around the differential COVID rates and different approaches in the different jurisdictions, differences in agricultural environment policy following Brexit, and particularly barriers to frontier workers and to the movement of people, so essentially EU26 people and third country nationals who are not protected by the Common Travel Area agreements. Looking at collaboration, 79% of respondents report that they are presently, or that their organisations are presently involved in collaborative projects with partner organisations in the other jurisdiction. And of that 79%, 54% report that they are in receipt of funding for these projects. And this is primarily from either the Irish government or from the EU. With a view towards the future, 28 respondents reported that their organisations are actively considering new and future collaborative projects with partner organisations in the other jurisdiction. Focusing on the contextual questions, and this is where we've developed the survey for this round in terms of the quantitative data being complemented with qualitative contributions from the respondents. Now, 51% of respondents believe that the political context north-south has deteriorated on the previous quarter. 29% say it has stayed the same, and 13% say it's improved. And when asked to elaborate and develop on how this is being perceived in practice, our respondents have pointed quite predominantly to the approach of the DUP, and their approach towards the protocol is having a negative impact on the conditions for cooperation north and south. We can see on the right-hand side of the slides here some of the contributions that cross-party attendance at the North-South Ministerial Council has been a concern, and that growing political instability in Northern Ireland and obstructionist attitudes to institutions are undermining confidence. It's not all negative contributions, as somebody points out that Brexit has improved the relevance of cross-border cooperation and collaboration. And I guess, while this may not be the way in which one would like to arrive at the recognition of importance, it is nonetheless good that the importance of this collaboration has been brought into focus and is being given more attention. Looking now towards the social context, 49% of respondents say that it has remained the same as the previous quarter. 33% say it has deteriorated compared to the previous quarter, and 13% say it's improved. Again, when we ask people to elaborate on how this is being manifest in practice, there are quite a lot of mentions around the manifestations of anxiety and insecurity among the Protestant Unionist Loyalist community, and how that is impacting on social relations in terms of cross-border cooperation. As you can see here, the contributions say that controversy within Loyalist communities and street violence in relation to the Brexit protocol arrangements, concerns that the type and intensity of Unionist protests will trigger retaliations among nationalist communities. But it's not all negative, as we can see that some organisations report having a very strong social collaboration and cohesion, and that this is not impacted by political failures, and so the social dimension remains robust in spite of political failings. When we look now towards the regulatory context, so policies and legalistic instruments, 42% say that the North-South regulatory context has remained the same on the previous quarter, and 38% say it has deteriorated. The contributions from our participants point particularly towards increased bureaucracy, and particularly a lack of coordination among the various parties. So between the UK, EU, Irish Government and Northern Irish Assembly, there has been concerns that there is a lack of coordination among all of these bodies at various levels, and this is hampering the conditions for cross-border cooperation. You can see that as Brexit unfolds, it's difficult for people to know where they stand on the issue, and that while people are still working within transitions regulations, they're at the anticipation of changes. And this is perhaps exacerbated by what's happening in Westminster in terms of the constant press for changes to the protocol and constant increase, either unilateral or through agreement, of grace periods. Means that businesses and cross-border organisations aren't really sure from one month to the next how things are going to proceed. It gives a lack of confidence and a lack of stability, which is inhibiting the conditions required for this kind of cooperation. Looking towards the material context, 50% of respondents said has stayed the same as the previous quarter, 31% said has deteriorated, and 8% said it's improved. The contributions from the participants point primarily towards issues around licensing and the increasing unavailability of products. And so we've got issues around driving licenses insurance and public liability insurance prohibiting activity between North and South. If we look now towards the East and West dimension, 49% of respondents report that they have had meetings with organisations, with partner organisations in Great Britain. For 75% of these, this has been at the same level as the previous quarter, though it has decreased for 14% of respondents. There's been less of a discussion around challenges. It's 63% of respondents have discussed challenges with partners in Great Britain, and these are focused primarily around issues of interreg funding and very much predominantly a lack of trust in the British government. Looking at collaboration, there's been 47% of respondents report that their organisations are currently involved in collaboration with partner organisations in Great Britain, and of that, 1/3 of respondents report that they are in receipt of funding. However, that is predominantly drawn from the organisation's own core funding, and so external funding is perhaps a bit of an issue becoming apparent here. Looking towards the future, 35% of respondents say that they are actively considering new collaborative projects with partner organisations in GB. And so both North, South and East, West, there is still a robustness of collaboration going on, which can always be improved and should be improved. It is still a positive sign, I would argue, that there is this robustness in the levels of contact and collaboration. Looking towards the contextual factors East-West, in terms of the political context, 57% of respondents say that it has remained the same as the previous quarter, and 28% say it's deteriorated. Respondents pointed predominantly to the lack of trust in British government. And we can see here quite clearly, trust in the British government has deteriorated. The UK government is creating uncertainty, and at the level we operate, government relationships are very difficult. Looking towards the social context, 60% of respondents say that that has remained the same as the previous quarter, and 24% say it's deteriorated. Similarly to the North-South dimension, respondents point towards the manifestation of anxieties and insecurities among Protestant Unionist loyalist communities, and particularly in the East-West dimension, people are reporting that this is being exacerbated by British media. And so we can see hostility in GB towards the EU has increased, and rhetoric in the newspapers is not helping, and that the protocol arrangements have been difficult for Unionist communities. When we look towards the regulatory context, 53% report that it has stayed the same, and 29% report that it has deteriorated. This is being quite overwhelmingly reported as being a result of the protocol. And so the impact of movement of goods from GB to NI has been considerable. Some people have also pointed to Westminster and their impact on delivering on NDNA as having sort of more broader implications for political relations that play out into the regulatory context. And as the last person points out here, the protocol has brought in more regulation, which was to be expected, but it still needs to be kept to a minimum. People appreciate that there will be change and that things will not be the same moving forward, but would like the UK government to act in a way that minimises these disruptions as far as is practicable. When we look towards the material context, 43% say that the material context has remained the same as the previous quarter, and 36% said has deteriorated. Respondents point, again, primarily towards the protocol, and there is a general sense that there's been a lack of preparation from GB business in preparing for the changes. There also needs to be a recognition that there was not much time given for preparation, particularly given the scale of change that is coming, and the messaging coming out from the government that essentially nothing has changed. And so there is a sense that GB businesses are perhaps underprepared for the changes that were coming, that have now taken place and will continue to take place. But this needs to be tempered with the messaging that was sent to GB businesses and how they are able to act within this broader context. Now, we've asked people how they, essentially whether they feel that there is enough information about the protocol, how they feel about the protocol, how informed they feel about the protocol rather, and where they get their information from. Now, 70% of respondents say that there is not enough information on the protocol, with 19% saying that there is enough. 21% feel that they are very informed nonetheless about the protocol, and 54% believe that they are somewhat informed. So despite the fact that people believe there is not necessarily a great deal of information, people nonetheless feel that they are predominantly relatively well informed. In terms of sources of information, 82% of respondents say that they get their information from the press and social media. 60% get their information also from the Irish government. 58% use the EU as a source of information, and 44% from the UK government. Finally, we've asked people just to, in their own words, provide us with any extra information that they think is going to be valuable in understanding the contexts and the challenges to contact and collaboration, both north-south and east-west. And we can see that some say greater economic partnership and collaboration is needed, and that Tourism Ireland can give lessons and indications of how to make this work in practice. The sharing of information has been particularly challenging on the ground because of the broader political context and the lack of coordination and the lack of agreement on how the protocol should work and how the post-Brexit life should operate in Northern Ireland particularly. This has meant that there's confusion among information that is being passed down from various organisations, or to various organisations from various bodies. Some have raised concerns around future funding opportunities in terms of LEADER and Interreg. However, again, there is positivity in that some people say that work will continue despite political failures, that people are just getting on, that the social cohesions are robust enough to be able to manage the challenges that are being presented. And this is encouraging. However, clearly the political context needs to move to facilitate this more efficiently, more effectively. So just moving towards the conclusions now. And well, as I said at the beginning, we cannot draw robust inferences between surveys because we are working with new panels. Looking at 36 respondents who have responded to each, there is a general sense that there is a general perception that among the contextual questions, things have moved from predominantly deteriorated last quarter to predominantly more or less the same this quarter, which might indicate a sense of normalization of these deteriorated contexts. Now, as we develop our research design, we should be able to gain a more nuanced insight into these inferences and see whether they are a normalization of these conditions, and this will need to be addressed because we cannot reasonably expect these deteriorated conditions to normalize. We need to work towards improved conditions. But from this survey, the overall context for the conditions of cooperation between Northern Ireland and the Republic and between Northern Ireland and Great Britain are broadly perceived as being the same or worse than the last quarter, and stayed the same was the predominant response for almost all contexts. A majority of respondents report engaging in meetings and collaborations with partners in the North-South dimension, and these figures were slightly less than half for the East-West dimension, so there is perhaps, it's difficult to say whether this is just a result of our sampling, that our sample maybe is more focused on North-South dimension, but nonetheless consideration and attention needs to be given to the East-West dimension to make sure that this is not suffering as a result of Brexit. Looking towards challenges to cooperation, both North-South and East-West, there is general consensus that the UK government and a lack of trust in the UK government is inhibiting the conditions for contact and collaboration and cooperation, both North-South and East-West. And there's concerns around the aversion of political unionism to the protocol and how this is being manifested in terms of social impact and in terms of impact on North-South institutions. The sense we get from the results of this survey is that certainty is required, and that while extension periods and grace periods are welcome, that still does not provide an enduring solution. What organisations need is certainty, which means the UK and EU need to come to an agreement on how the protocol is going to work in the long term so that organizations can plan for their current projects and future projects with confidence in their broader socio-political and regulatory context. And I think this is the thing that perhaps we need to be giving a lot of focus to, is ensuring that we can restore levels of trust and that we can generate certainty for organizations to continue in their activities. And I am going to wrap up there. Thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, me and Anthony are both here, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben, for that comprehensive presentation of the survey results. Really clear, and I would just ask anyone to use the chat function if they have any questions they would like to questions or comments, if they want to put in some comments on what Ben has presented. Obviously, one of the difficulties here, or one of the challenges here, and I was going to mention it to start and I forgot. I was going to say I was going to preempt anybody in terms of asking, can we have this seminar outside? I'm going to say, unfortunately, no, we can't. For many of us, obviously, we're looking out the window and the sun is shining, which is very unusual in terms of its intensity and kind of durability here in Northern Ireland. So lots of people are taking the opportunity to enjoy this weather. But in saying that, one of the things that struck me again, that's come out in this survey again, is the resilience of organizations in terms of their ability to continue to collaborate, to continue to engage in cooperation, particularly on a north-south basis, but also on an east-west basis. They are continuing to collaborate. But one of the things that came out here again, and perhaps even a bit more strongly than last time, was, and in fact, I have to mention here that because obviously the Centre for Cross-Border Studies is involved in the convening of the ad hoc group for North-South and East-West cooperation, and that group met yesterday for just one of its internal meetings to update each other on how things were going, and it came up yesterday. It's in terms of organizations on the island of Ireland and their ability to engage and cooperate with organizations in Great Britain. The bandwidth has reduced because of, let's say, some of the challenges in terms of ensuring that we do maintain the North-South cooperation element to continue. It's reduced the ability, the resourcing available for organizations to look towards Great Britain, particularly in terms of engaging in new collaboration. So that was actually is evident in the survey and came out in discussions yesterday as well. But also what became evident has become evident in the survey. So it was there in the first quarter, and I think it's there again in the second quarter, and it has become evident in discussions with organizations, North and South, is, let's say, the lack of resourcing, i.e. funding streams that would allow for cooperation on an east-west basis, particularly as the Interreg program that was available, that meant that Scotland was involved in an Interreg program with Ireland, Northern Ireland, and the Wales Island program. It's how do we resource the East-West collaboration piece going forward? That is a particular challenge, and but we, of course, the Centre for Cross-Border Studies in various discussions has highlighted this to UK government officials and ministers, that there's a gap there that perhaps needs to be filled. Obviously, the Department of Foreign Affairs, Ireland's Department of Foreign Affairs Reconciliation Fund, has an East-West element to it, but perhaps there's a gap there that needs to be filled. And again, also the forthcoming Peace Plus program will have the ability to involve partners outside of the immediate eligible area, and there's potential there, but nevertheless, perhaps there's an opportunity here to increase the resourcing available for the East-West element, as well as ensuring that the North-South element is not just maintained but is strengthened going forward. So those are just some of the thoughts that coming from me as looking at those results. I'll just give it a couple of more minutes to see. I encourage people, if you have any questions, any comments, please use the chat function. I'll give you a couple more minutes. I'm not necessarily say that we're gluing you to your seat and you're not allowed to depart until you have come up with a question. But I want to make sure that people do have the opportunity to pose any questions that Ben might have. Actually, Ben, is there anything in terms that you might want to add, some of your own analysis, your own interpretations, your own views? Because obviously this is a survey, and we're just presenting the results of that survey without necessarily putting an analysis to it that brings in our own views necessarily. But is there anything any comments that you would like to add?
I think the only thing really that I like to reiterate is that certainty is something that has been lacking really for a number of years to greater or lesser extent. Since 2016, well, we've been trying to figure out what Brexit looks like, and that has changed various times over the course of the last 5 years, to the point where we have a general shape of Brexit, and even that is now being contested by various organisations and various higher level political organisations. Up to yesterday, where the new paper put forward by the UK government in Brandon Lewis and Lord Frost, which again denies any form of certainty. We're still negotiating, we're still trying to navigate the post-Brexit context, and this isn't helpful for organisations. And so I think a clear message that needs to be sent is that even if there are some things that will, and Brexit of course will be negotiated constantly through the future, there needs to be a base level of certainty that people can work within. Now, this was originally supposed to be, the protocol would be the base level that we could do, but while this is constantly being contested and in attempts to renegotiate, it is leaving border organisations, both north, south and east, west, in a state of limbo where they're not able to plan properly. And I think that the political decision makers, it's incumbent on them to agree at least a base level of understanding of continuity where organisations are able to plan and operate.
Thanks. And just on that, obviously, as Ben said, and I kind of referred to in my introductory comments yesterday, we did see the publication of the UK government's command paper, where we had a statement by Lord Frost in the House of Lords and a statement by the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Brandon Lewis, in the House of Commons. Just so to make you aware, the Centre for Cross-Border Studies, I represent the Centre for Cross-Border Studies at a meeting yesterday with the Secretary of State and Northern Ireland Office officials in the wake of the publication of that command paper. And at that point, I did say that I'd only read through the command paper, not in enormous detail. I did read it all, but we do need to look at it in more detail. But in terms of initial reactions, I think this is a widespread concern amongst third sector organisations in Northern Ireland, but also on the island of Ireland more widely. And it's this concern around the use of language. So one of the things that I highlighted yesterday is that where people raise concerns around the proposals made by the UK government yesterday, or indeed disagree with those proposals, that shouldn't be seen or make people label those people raising those concerns or that disagreement as necessarily anti-UK or anti-British or pro-EU. Is that use of language that is really, really important, particularly when it's then translated, when it is heard, reverberates here on the island of Ireland, and particularly Northern Ireland. So that was a particular area of concern. We also noted the UK government's proposal on standstill arrangements, that basically a pause at the moment in terms of the current arrangements, and that perhaps there's something there, as long as it leads to, let's say, positive engagement within the mechanisms of the protocol to reach wider understanding and perhaps introduce other joint proposals in terms of how we move forward. But there was also ambitious proposals from the UK government in terms of the governance structures around the protocol. But one of the final comments here in terms of that publication yesterday is the need for structured engagement going forward. and that structured engagement in terms of engagement with civic society organisations as we move forward. So I'm seeing here some questions coming in from Pat Trainer. I think it's border communities have been critical about their views being ignored at government level. Who will receive this report? Is there a commitment at any level of government to heed these views and respond to them? In terms of who receives the report, i.e. the results, they are so. Without wishing to disclose necessarily, because people are attending this webinar as individuals, and so I don't want to necessarily publicize individuals' names or anything. There is a presence here, let's just say, at these presentations from officials from all jurisdictions with an interest in this. So that's the first thing to note. And then the research briefings themselves are communicated, are disseminated to the relevant stakeholders. And it's not necessarily looking for an immediate response. This is a mechanism to allow those who are responsible for the monitoring and implementation of the protocol, and also just the monitoring of cooperation wholesale, just to give them a sense of where things stand. We need evidence going forward in terms of how things are operating on the ground in terms of North-South and East-West cooperation. So it's an evidence gathering mechanism in order for us to introduce any changes that might need to be undertaken in order to safeguard that cooperation. Again, here from Sean, what does CCBS hope to do with the results of these surveys? Is there a lobbying strategy or communication pathway for raising? Yes, Sean, again, just reiterating that. So we use these results in terms of our engagement with officials and political leaders in all jurisdictions, and in engagements with the European Commission. It's evidence that we use to raise concerns, to introduce proposals to officials and political leaders. So yes, but also we communicate these results to other organisations who are involved in cooperation and collaboration on the island of Ireland and Great Britain. So it's not just for us, it's a collaborative effort. And one of the means of that collaborative effort in terms of what we're doing with some of our partner organisations, I mentioned it earlier, is the ad hoc group for North-South and East-West cooperation, which does regularly engage again with officials in all of the jurisdictions and with political leaders. And it's an important vehicle because it is a vehicle that brings together not just organisations, community and voluntary organisations from Northern Ireland, but also those from the Republic of Ireland who are engaged in cooperation. Because if we're going to talk about cooperation and how to safeguard it, we can't do that without having organisations from the Republic of Ireland present in those conversations, because they're involved in that North-South element, and also in the East-West. Many of the organisations, if not all of the organisations in the ad hoc group for North-South and East-West cooperation, are involved in North-South and East-West cooperation. We have an interest in engaging with our partners in Great Britain. So that's another channel of communication. Yes, slides will be available immediately after. There will be emailed to you, as well as, I mentioned it to you at the beginning, Ben's research briefing paper that accompanies this survey, which presents the results in more detail. The link will be sent to you. It will be published at 12 p.m. today, but the link will be sent to you anyway, so don't worry about that. But yes, the slides and the more detailed presentation, more detailed research briefing paper will be made available to you all. I think that's our time. So we wanted to keep this as brief as possible. Oh, sorry, here's another one. So Ben had stated that there was a great response to the second survey in terms of the number of respondents. How will you continue to grow the number of groups and organisations that engage with these surveys? Maybe I'll let Ben come in on that one.
Yeah, I'm happy to come into this one. It wasn't that there was a great response to the second survey per se. There was a similar number. I think it was slightly less for the second survey. There were 80 respondents in the first survey and 72 in this survey. So the numbers are broadly similar. It's that the level of repeat respondents was different. I think 48% of respondents reported, 48% of respondents in this survey reported that they had, sorry, let me get this right. It's not 48%, it's 48 respondents to this survey reported that they had also completed the first survey. However, we were only able to verify 36 of those. And so it's a case of being able to draw comparisons between 2 rounds of surveys where you're essentially working with a different panel, which creates some issues in terms of being able to draw inferences. And so we're now developing our research strategy and our recruitment strategy to ensure repeat responses. And the centre has yesterday put out a recruitment advert for a research assistant to help with this project, and they will be building on engagement and outreach to ensure that we have a robust core of repeat respondents so that we're able to draw these inferences moving forward.
Yeah, Ben, absolutely. It's a question of creating, let's say, or consolidating a robust kind of core cohort of respondents that we will use for each quarter. But it goes back to this issue of this is the post-Brexit context. It's a long-term thing, and it's engaging people who have to put in a certain amount of effort in terms of completing these surveys, in the knowledge that it is, this won't be over in a couple of quarters. This is something that is an ongoing process. So we have to consolidate that kind of core cohort. That doesn't mean that we don't welcome new respondents to the survey. Absolutely, because it's quantitative and qualitative survey. It allows people to introduce comments and to give their views on issues relevant to North, South and East West cooperation. So we're not inferring at all that new respondents in future quarterly surveys won't be welcome. They absolutely will be, and their information, their insights are absolutely vital. But as I said at the beginning, the core, the prime target for this survey is civic society organisations and local authorities, because it's at those levels that we want to make sure that we safeguard cooperation at those levels, that we have those kind of grassroots community organisations, local authorities, and the kind of informal cooperation or kind of seed funded projects that's happening that really are protected going forward, and that we monitoring it. See Aidan there talking about the language around these issues. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, agree with that as well, Aidan. Thank you. Look, it's coming up to, it's like very often when we have officials with meetings with very important officials, the 45-minute mark is usually what's allotted to a meeting, and you are in the audience are absolutely really important people. So we're really grateful for all the time that you spent with us this morning on this, what is here anyway in Belfast, where I'm sitting now, a very sunny, very warm day. Ben is in the tropics of Bristol, I believe, at the moment. So thank you all so much, and please stay in touch with the Centre for Cross-Border Studies. Please get involved with the work that we're doing. We are absolutely intent on ensuring that the North, South and East, West relations and cooperation are safeguarded, strengthened and going forward, and that's what we hope to do with your help. So thank you very much to everybody. Have a great day, and see you at the next quarterly survey if I don't see you before then. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Ben. Bye-bye.